The deities Baal and Tammuz were worshipped by the ancient Moabites under the names Chemosh and Molech. We see that the names changed, but the worship remained identical. The ancient Moabites would celebrate a public child mass, a public child sacrifice during the winter solstice during December 25th. Building up to this most anticipated time of year, all the parents would compile long wish lists that they would like to see in the next year. Then they would bring the infants that were born within that year to the idol Chemosh or Molech. The priest of Chemosh or Molech would stoke large fires inside of the hollow metal idol of the deity. The parent would bring their child screaming to the lap of this deity and lay their child in the lap of Molech, who wore the Phrygian cap that we see that Santa Claus wears to this day, the same cap that Mithra wore. And they would lay their screaming child in the arm of this deity while they begin to profess their long list of desires for the year. Now today we don't see that people are sacrificing their children to Molech, but we do see that they bring their screaming infants, their screaming children, and lay them into the lap of a complete stranger dressed up like a mighty one who they call Santa Claus. And this child is usually screaming their guts out because they're so afraid of this man, and they probably sense the darkness and the demonic forces that are at work. Children, infants, hate Santa Claus, and the proof is in the pictures. Now, of course, after a few years, the child will begin to love Santa Claus and look at Santa Claus as an all-supreme, all-wise, all-knowing, giving deity of prosperity, just as the ancient Moabites looked at Molech and Chemosh. He knows when you are sleeping and he knows when you are awake. In fact, he is all-knowing. He is immortal. He has no beginning and no end. He compiles a list of names on a scroll for the good and the bad children. He rewards the good children with gifts, and he punishes the bad children with lumps of coal reminiscent of the flames of Molech. He answers their prayers and their petitions. He flies on a magical chariot, just like Mithra, Sol Invictus, and Odin before him. In fact, he is a deity of prosperity worshipped by the people of the world. And it's amazing that Christian parents would put this idol, this image, against the face of Yahuwah and teach their children that gifts come from this magical, all-knowing being, making him a deity. And they will lie to their children and tell them that he exists. And while they're young, they will believe it with all of their heart until finally they are crushed under the realization that their parents had tricked them. And now they will question everything that their parents will ever teach them about the scriptures because of this innocent white lie, as they say. Santa and his elves have a very dark past. Santa is identified as an elf in most of the world. The Celts believed that the elves were witches and wizards, and they were identified by their pointy or Phrygian caps. And they were the teachers of the dark arts. Webster's dictionary describes an elf as a wandering spirit, a fairy, a hobgoblin, an imaginary being which our rude ancestors supposed to inhabit unfrequented places and in various ways to affect mankind. Also, an evil spirit or a devil. Satanist and New Age guru H.P. Blavatsky states that elves are disembodied spirits used in magic and sorcery and are the principal agents in seances. In places like Austria, Hungary, Germany, Italy, and elsewhere, Santa Claus is identified by his original name, which is Sinterklaas. And there are variations of Sinterklaas throughout Europe. Some variations have Sinterklaas riding on a magical flying goat. Other versions have him riding on a magical flying white horse. Either way, he is always accompanied by dark helpers. Usually they are referred to as the Krampus. And the Krampus is a half goat, half man demon that goes with Sinterklaas from house to house. In the 1500s, Sinterklaas became a kind old man who gave gifts and flew on his magical chariot and was accompanied by these dark helpers or blackjacks. He was Christianized as a saint by the name of Nicholas, supposedly based on the saint of Myra in Turkey, who was legendary. He would leave gifts under the sacred tree on his birthday if you had been good, but if you had not, his demons, his Krampuses, would either abduct you or beat you with sticks. Saint Nicholas supposedly captured Satan and called him by various names: the Krampus, Baalzebub, Zwartdeit, or the Black Peter, and Neck Ruprecht. And these were just some of the names. In some of the cultures, Sinterklaas was dropped altogether, and the only remaining figure was the Krampus, which was kept and known as Weihnachtsmann, which means Santa Claus in the Germanic languages. In other words, in some cultures, Santa Claus is known to be Satan himself, who is the Krampus. Now let us look at some clips of Sinterklaas in Europe. But be warned, some of these images may be disturbing.
Ich bin der heilige Nikolaus, bringe Glück und Segen in dieses Haus. Die Braven, die werde ich heute belohnen. Und falls doch jemand schlimm war, für den hätte ich die Krampusse mitgebracht. Ja, Ruhe, Krampusse.
Danke.
And these are the satanic origins of the Anglo-sized Santa Claus, who is Sinterklaas, and his elves, the goat-headed demons. And this is important to understand because the goat-headed mighty one is worshipped in the religion of Satanism and in pagan worship by the name Baphomet. He is also called the Horned One or the Stag Deity. Sometimes he is depicted with the horns of the goat, and sometimes he is depicted with the horns of the reindeer. In the 1970s, the Second Vatican Council stated that no Roman Catholic bishop by the name of Saint Nicholas ever existed. This is historical because people will often say, well, Saint Nicholas was a real person, but the Second Vatican Council states no such person ever existed. They go on to state that the legends attributed to Saint Nicholas had no Christian origin and probably came from pagan traditions. So therefore, the character known as Saint Nicholas is a myth. He is nothing more than a pagan deity who has been revamped and Christianized, just like Christianity has Christianized Christmas. The Oxford English Dictionary states the devil is called Satan, Lucifer, Beelzebub, and even in popular rustic speech, he is called Old Dictionary of English Etymology also agrees that Nick is the devil. Old Nick was a well-known British name for Satan. The Greek name Nicholas means the conqueror of the people. Revelation chapter 2 verse 15 reads, "So you also have those who adhere to the teaching of the Nicolaitans or the Nicolaitans, which teaching I hate." The teaching of the Nicolaitans came from their teacher Nicholas, who taught them that it was okay to eat food sacrificed to idols and to commit whoring, to make the children of Israel stumble. This is most likely the origin of the saint called Nicholas of the Roman Catholic Church. In the 1600s, a series of plays were developed starring a character known as Robin Goodfellow, who was a half-man, half-goat demon. In The History of a Hobgoblin, author Alan W. Wright reveals that Robin itself was a medieval name for the devil, and that Robin's trademark laugh was ho, ho, ho. During the 1600s, this goat-headed devil had already revealed the trademark laugh that Santa Claus would later take on.
Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Ho, ho, ho.
In Scandinavia, the winter festival was Yule. In the Chaldean language, Yule means the infant, the child, referring to the baby Tammuz. Apparently, the Scandinavians borrowed the term for their winter festival. On December 21st, Odin, who was the chief deity, would fly through the night on his 8-legged horse, which would symbolize the 8 reindeer of Santa Claus. Odin was represented as an ancient man with a long white beard. His idols portray him with a pointy hat, like the elves and Santa Claus wear. People feared the wrath of Odin, who had come to take the spirits of the dead. They would leave treats and grain offerings for Odin and his horse. Spirits would roam freely during this time of the year, and the worshippers would try to communicate with these spirits. Evergreen trees would be brought inside to represent eternal life and the conquering of death of the sun deity. Mistletoe was revered by the Druids. Mistletoe has no roots in the ground, therefore it is seen as a gift from the heavens. On the 6th day of the moon, the Druids would cut the sacred mistletoe with a golden sickle, which was caught with sheets by priests beneath and not to be touched with human hands. Germanics believed that all who passed beneath a mistletoe were kissed by Freya, the goddess of fertility, and were blessed with sexual powers. During this time of the year, it is believed that the horned deity, the stag deity, would return to the earth, who is symbolized as Pan in the ancient Greco-Roman pantheon. In Scandinavia today, the Santa is still a goblin, and this is seen as the dark time of the year. To celebrate Yule, one must deck the halls with boughs of holly and bring evergreens into the home. And they had to bring a large log into the home that they would burn for 12 days. This is where the 12 days of Christmas comes from. It had to be kindled with a piece of the log that came from the year before. And this was to keep the ancestral spirits happy, who were believed to live within the fire. Therefore, the fire was kept burning with offerings of food and sacrifice. Originally, the sacrifice was made of humans and animals. The World Book Encyclopedia states the belief that Santa comes down through the chimney developed from an old Norse legend. The Norse believed that the goddess Hertha appeared in the fireplace and brought good luck to the home. It continues that Druids worshipped a deity named Hertha. Druid homeowners would leave a treat consisting of milk and pastries to appease this deity that came down into their chimney, into their fireplace. And this is where the idea of leaving milk and cookies out for Santa Claus originates.